Bienvenidos. Mi español es muy malo, pero gracias por hablar conmigo.
we have a translator, don't worry.
I know. Well, that's good because that was Google Translate that helped me finish that sentence.
Oh no. It's great to try.
Well, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for the time.
Of course.
Yeah, Justin, let's start with you. I was wondering, what is it that drew you to this story, and how did it sort of come to be?
Yeah, so it started actually just my relationship in general with Guatemala began in 2015, 2016 when I moved there temporarily to help start a film school. I was the first film professor at a brand new film program in Guatemala City, in the capital. And after about a year of living there on and off, and I still do live there on and off depending on the time of year, because I am still affiliated with the school, and of course now I'm making films there. One of my students brought me to his hometown, Puerto Barrios, where the film takes place. And just as a weekend trip to see if there was any, he wanted to show me places to shoot for some project in the future, because it's such a beautiful town with jungle, beach, city. It has all these really picturesque locations. But spending time there, I just started to get to meet people in the community. And by pure chance, I just started meeting people, mostly young, but of all ages, who had backgrounds in crime and these small disorganized groups of people called clickas, which are kind of more disorganized gangs that are not as organized and as strict, maybe you would say, as like, you know, you would see in like Mexico or maybe even El Salvador. But I just got to become friends with all these different people, and they started telling me all these stories. And after about like 4 or 5 days of this, I realized that I wanted to come back and learn more. And it was organic. It wasn't something that was planned. I was going there to get an idea, nothing like that. It was just something where I couldn't stop thinking about all these really interesting people that I met that ended up actually becoming part of the story, and even some of them acting as themselves or versions of themselves in the film. So it really started from a trip and these casual friendships that were made over the course of, I would say, probably about a year before I really started actually sitting down and writing.
Wow, that's amazing. And I should say, as I realized I didn't say this at the beginning, it's a wonderful film.
Oh, thank you.
It's really great. Karen, Brandon, you are both wonderful in the film. It's your performances are excellent.
Gracias.
They're two of our only professional actors, actually, which is interesting. Mixing. I always find that mixing professionals and non-professionals is really an interesting choice, because the professionals being there makes the non-professionals want to work harder, and the non-professionals being there makes the professionals like stay real and in the moment, because they can't fake it, because the non-professionals aren't. It brings everybody kind of to the same level. It was an intentional choice, but Brandon and Karen got their start in their first movie they did, La Jale de Oro, as they were found on the street casting, you know, and were non-professionals who then became actors after their first project together back in 2013. The film came out, and they, you know, won an award at Cannes for it and everything. So,
wow, that's amazing. You know, well, this you mentioned this, Justin, and certainly maybe Karen and Brandon can speak to this too. But it's interesting that, like you said, Justin, that the film casts people playing themselves or versions of themselves. So what was it like for you all to develop characters in a story with people who had actually are or have been a part of this world?
I think that's a great thing for them to answer. I'll let them.
Pienso que fue importante mucho la comunicación y hacer sentir cómodos a los chicos y a las chicas.
I think communication was key, and to make guys and girls feel comfortable.
Principalmente porque cuando tú convives con ellos, te das cuenta que son el personaje perfecto para una película y es lo que tú necesitas, pero a veces la cámara es como intimidante para ellos, entonces, pues a través de la convivencia teníamos que lograr que ellos se olvidaran de la cámara o que se acostumbraran a que la cámara estuviera allí.
So it's very interesting to meet people who are a perfect fit for some characters and for what you need. But sometimes when you take out the camera, then they feel a little invaded. So it's a job of how to also help them forget that the camera is there.
Y pienso que fue un proceso muy divertido convivir con ellos porque estaban muy dispuestos a aprender y realmente fue más como la convivencia que las explicaciones técnicas de lo que tenían que hacer. Y pienso que la primera experiencia que Brandon y yo tuvimos para actuar cuando nosotros estuvimos en esa posición nos ayudó mucho a poder ayudarles a ellos, pensamos en qué fue lo que nosotros necesitamos en ese momento para poder pues actuar con naturalidad y lo utilizamos con ellos ahora en esta película.
So it was a very fun process to share with them because they were very willing to learn. But it's also more than just the technical explanations, the sharing with them and the friendship we generate. Brandon and I were there. That helped a lot because we have been through this process in our past film. So learning from that and sharing this knowledge with them and putting ourselves in our shoes and going back and thinking, what did we need back then?
Sí.
That was really helpful. Yeah.
Sí, yo creo que fue una experiencia, primero que nada, nueva para nosotros, pero que a la misma vez pudimos aprovechar para también darnos cuenta de que lo que nosotros habíamos pasado en alguna ocasión con nuestra primera experiencia en el cine, nos estaba sucediendo ahora, solo que ya viéndola desde otro punto de vista, porque ya por lo menos ya tenemos como, ya hemos estado en otros proyectos y todo eso, pero no ha sido lo mismo poder trabajar con estos chicos de Puerto Barrios, que lo que tuvimos que hacer fue hacernos amigos de ellos y ser nosotros mismos y ellos mismos, y solo como que mantener ese mismo nivel de siempre, pues de ser nosotros mismos con ellos y ser amigos para que todo fluyera con naturalidad todo el tiempo.
So I think it was a new experience to us, and at the same time we could use it to realize that we have been through a similar process in our first film, but this time we were living it from a different point of view. It's not the same with them. We had to become friends and be ourselves, and we had to keep the same level of acting and find a balance between their acting and ours.
Sí, fue un gran proceso desde la primera vez que fuimos a Puerto Barrios con Justin. Desde ahí todo fluyó muy bien con los chicos de Puerto Barrios, nos hicimos amigos, convivimos, hicimos algunos ejercicios, almorzamos juntos, y todo fue, o sea, sin necesidad de irles a pedir que fueran mis amigos, nos hicimos amigos y empezamos a convivir, y eso mismo fue lo que fue fluyendo. Ya en el rodaje ya no teníamos como mucho que ¿cómo se dice? Jalar a la fuerza, sino que ya era como que fluía, ya yo podía platicar con ellos como que yo fuera de verdad el de la clicka y ellos también. Ajá.
So it was a great process since the first time when we traveled with Justin to Puerto Barrios. Everything went really well. We became friends with them. We shared, we exercised together, we ate together. We didn't need to force this approach. and we just started sharing, and it became natural. And the shoot, we didn't have to kind of force it, because we were already able to maintain honest talks. And to me, it was very easier to play the bad guy's role and feel comfortable around them. They would feel comfortable.
I should mention, which Brandon, he's explaining that he was the on-set acting coach for all the non-professionals in the gang. And he came with me before the shoot to do rehearsals and training with them. So by the time they got to set, they'd already looked up to him as an acting coach. Maybe they Googled him or gone on YouTube to see his clips from his movies. But that's what he's referring to. So he was not only coaching them and rehearsing with me and them before the shoot, but on set between takes of acting, he was also like helping me get them in the right place for their performances.
That's incredible. That's really interesting. And one of the things I loved about the film is how natural it felt. It feels very natural. You know, sometimes when you see these films, there's certain edge that looks to sensationalize things or make them grander, but this just feels very grounded and authentic. So that.
Go ahead, Brandon.
Que en mi caso, por ejemplo, sí me tocó, digamos, el hecho de haber convivido con todos ellos, también me tocó mucho aprender de ellos. Entonces, todo el tiempo estábamos como preparándonos para los personajes con Justin, pero también yo más bien tenía, en el tiempo que me mantenía con ellos, me tocó aprender mucho para poder ser como todos. Fue también parte de mi proceso de mi personaje y también parte del proceso de todos los personajes.
So in my case, it was, I also learned from them, because all the time we were getting prepared and for the characters with Justin, but I also learned a lot. It was an important part of my process and the building of my character as well as theirs.
Well, and for you both, one of the things that I noticed in particular is the film feels like a very personal project to you. I was wondering, how did you connect with your characters yourselves?
¿Cómo conectaron a sus personajes con ustedes mismos?
Pues pienso que una forma de conectar con el personaje fue la motivación que Justin tenía. Era muy similar a la motivación que yo tengo del por qué hacer cine y de qué historias me gustaría contar en el cine o formar parte de. También porque Justin habla mucho como de encontrarle un sentido del por qué las personas hacen lo que hacen y conocer cómo son, cómo viven y pues que uno entienda como también las circunstancias de vida de las personas y eso me pasa mucho a mí. A mí me gusta mucho saber el porqué de las situaciones de las personas.
So I think it was a way for me to connect with the character was the motivation that Justin had, because it's very similar to the motivation that I have on why to make films and what kind of stories I would like to tell and be part of them. Also, because Justin, as Justin says, it's a film about trying to find a sense to what people do or why they do it, how they live, and understand their circumstances, under the circumstances under which they live. I really like to answer that question. Why?
Sí, y pues también que pienso que la película tiene el personaje de Sarita, este sentido de urgencia, de realmente tomar la decisión de avanzar por su propia cuenta para encontrar a su hermana. O sea, ella realmente quiso hacer algo y no quedarse solo con las soluciones que hay que hacer, ¿verdad? Ir a la policía o esperar a que aparezca o resignarse a que no aparezca. Y entonces, al leer la historia, me di cuenta de que seguramente esa intensidad de querer hacer algo por lo que me está pasando, yo la he sentido muchas veces, ¿verdad? Y seguramente muchas otras personas lo sienten, pero el personaje lo hizo realidad y eso es como lo más importante para mí, que sí fue una persona que fue determinante, ¿verdad? Ay, fiel a su objetivo y eso.
So I also, other thing I like about the film and Sarita's character is this sense of urgency that she has to make decisions and to move on by herself, to be able to find her sister, to track her sister. She wanted to do it. She didn't want she didn't conform by going to the police. She really wanted to move forward and she took it in her own hands. So when I read this story that is so intense, and I think about how many times I have felt this way about something that is going on to me, this is really attractive to me because this girl, she makes it and she goes for it.
Sí. Yo creo que conecté con mi personaje desde, bueno, la primera vez me reuní con Justin y platicamos y me explicó cómo iba a ser todo lo de la película y luego me mandó su primer tratamiento de guión, uno de los primeros tratamientos de su guión y entonces desde esa vez, desde que hablé con Justin, él me dijo más o menos cómo iba a ser todo y yo pues la verdad llevo muy pocos proyectos, pero creo que también tengo eso de poder aceptar qué personaje puedo trabajar y qué personaje no puedo trabajar. Y este personaje en particular me encantó demasiado y sí lo tomé como muy personal por el tipo de historia que se cuenta y porque es uno y es también parte de los personajes que me gusta crear como muy fuertes, como Mando y eso.
I believe I connected with my character since the first time I met Justin and we started talking and he explained the character to me. He also then sent the first treatment of the script and since then I understood more or less how this was going to be. I have done only a few projects, but I have the luck to be able to take what characters I connect to and which characters I don't. And in this case, in the case of this character, it was very personal to me because of the kind of story that it is, and also that this character is a strong, commanding voice inside the gang.
Sí, y también porque creo yo que son personajes increíbles. El hecho de poder trabajar con actores, luego me apasionó mucho más mi personaje de Damián, porque ya conociendo a los demás chicos de Puerto Barrios, cuando ya los empecé a conocer, como que me empecé a involucrar más en él. Cuando ya empecé a estar con Rudy, me estuve casi que todo diciembre con Rudy, ¿va?
Sí.
Y luego, y antes de eso también que fuimos como 3 veces a Puerto Barrios y ver a los demás chicos, eso y también el haber vivido cosas medio parecidas, no iguales, pero el hecho de haber visto cosas en todo el país y en otros países como eso, también me daba como muchas ganas de poder vivirlo de alguna manera. Entonces, poder trabajar ese personaje y serlo vivirlo y estar en él, creo que eso me hizo probarlo, hacerlo, perdón, conectar.
I I also think it's because all of these characters are amazing characters, and it's also a great opportunity to be able to work with non-professional actors. I was even more impressed by my character Damian when I started meeting all the other non-professional actors, and I think I started connecting with my character more. I spent almost all of December with Rudy Rodriguez, who plays Andres. We went also like 3 times to Puerto Barrios before the pre-production. And having also another thing is that living in the context where this kind of stories happen, and I have seen such things also happen with my own eyes, it makes me want to live it as a character. It makes me move to want to understand, work that character, live it, and that's what made me do it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's amazing. And I mean, the relationships that you have with the other cast members makes it, as I said before, it flows so naturally, and you can see how invested you are in your characters.
Eso en tus personajes que ustedes lo lograron muy bien.
Sí. Con la dirección de Justin.
With the direction of Justin.
What did he say? Sorry.
With the directing of Justin.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
For you all, and I'm not sure, I'm sure we're running out of time soon, but I was wondering about the clickas themselves. They seem to operate very differently than most traditional crime or gangs that we see depicted in film or just in general. Even especially as the way that women are allowed to rise up. I was wondering what surprised you most about what you learned about
the role of women in these clickas in Puerto Barrios specifically was one of the things that attracted me the most to telling a story like this, because it was something I hadn't encountered. But I have to say before anything that I wanna step away from being able to speak in general about any about gangs in general or clickas in general, because I specifically researched this part of the world, this small city. And so, and also within the city, there are different kinds of groups, but the ones that I spoke to, I did the research with, I wrote a story based on the information I got there. So of course, for each group you meet, there's probably a different story and a different way they're organized. And I think that that's really interesting. So while the film isn't going to speak about every kind of different gang there is in Guatemala, I think that's impossible, because as impossible as it would be to tell a story about one person and have it be about a general type of person, because I specifically researched real people, this is as close as I could get to their actual biographical stories and situations. That said, I do feel you're right in that the clickas are organized in a much more casual and interesting way than you traditionally see in big movies about gangs. I found that the ones that I researched and investigated and spoke to people from, there were certain parts of like a lifestyle of crime that resembled other lifestyles of crime in groups like in, old country of Italy or other parts of Latin America, for sure. But there were so many unique things, specifically how high a woman could climb in the ranks of a gang and actually have more power and do things other than the things that women are usually relegated to in gangs that we see on film, which is prostitution or drugs, right? That to me said, when I started thinking, how am I going to tell a story that's interesting and a different take on a story we've maybe seen parts of before, I said, well, this is an opportunity to show a woman who is kind of trying to outrun her place in her life and actually trying to get further. And actually, if there is a place in Barrios where women can actually join and through success join up in the ranks, it lends itself to an interesting story that to put a woman protagonist in the center of the film, trying to like drive into a gang to infiltrate it and not like hit a wall. She can keep going and going and going. And that to me was so unique to this part of the world, and this actually not even this part of the world, this part of Guatemala, that I thought this was a good way to do it. Yeah.
Well, honestly, Karen, Brandon, you guys are incredible, wonderful in the film. It's a powerful story. Justin, thank you for bringing this to us as well. So thank you all so much for chatting with me. I appreciate it.
Hasta luego.